You might just have to use your command voice text. I don't know. It looks like it's coming up.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you, everybody, for being here today and joining the subcommittee to discuss how each of you work to ensure the safety of your industry, your passengers, your customers, and your marine environment. This roundtable represents a wide range of domestic maritime operators. All of you have your own unique experiences, challenges, and viewpoints, and we look forward to hearing from you. I hope to walk away from this discussion a better understanding of the issues that face domestic maritime transportation industry. Over the past few decades, many of your sectors have seen significant safety gains, in part due to better industry safety practices. At the same time, the speed of progress of technology, as you can understand, all the technology that's out there in the maritime sector is astounding. The greater use of technology in vessel construction and operation provides an exciting opportunities while also making safety issues a little more complex. I hope to hear from the Coast Guard how the service is balancing the need for safety and innovation. I encourage the industry to share what you see on the horizon as the new technologies are adopted and brought into practice. I appreciate everybody for being here today. I now recognize Ranking Member Carbajal. Do you have any opening comments?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Chair. As usual, I will defer to our ranking member, Mr. Larson.
Go ahead, Mr. Larson.
How's that? Yeah.
That's good.
So thank you. I want to thank the panel for participating today as well. The people in this room improve marine safety, invest in innovation to improve efficiency in operations, and implement life-saving regulations. I'd be remiss if I didn't have all these marine-related people in front of us to say that the administration needs to end the Jones Act waiver. Everyone in this room knows that if you applaud, then it bites into my time, so just to be clear. So you can thank me later.
It's my time.
Everyone in this room knows the vessels built and crewed by Americans are safer, and rather than issuing waivers, the administration should strengthen its enforcement and the programs that support the U.S. flagged fleet. Concerning the administration as well has reduced capacity in the Coast Guard search and rescue mission. Coast Guard needs to reopen and restore its stations that were closed in 2024 because lives depend upon it. I'm very pleased, however, that the Coast Guard is recapitalizing its heavy weather rescue craft using Rosamond Boat Works in Bow, Washington. These boats, which can operate in the harshest of conditions and will at the mouth of the Columbia River, provide vital life-saving capacity across the country. The Coast Guard's oil spill prevention response mission is also important, and its importance in the Pacific Northwest just multiplied due to Canada's decision to ship more oil through the Salish Sea and the Strait of Juan de Fuca. The Coast Guard and the maritime industry must immediately begin prevention planning through the Canada-U.S. Joint Marine Pollution Contingency Plan to address this potential increased traffic from Roberts Bank through the Strait and out to the Pacific. The Coast Guard implements new safety efforts and regulations by working with vessel operators and mariners and other key stakeholders. And one area where they have effectively worked together is in the swift implementation of the Safer Seas Act, and commend all of you for working together to root out and prevent sexual violence and harassment in our maritime industry. But the job isn't done, and everyone in this room has to remain vigilant. So I look forward to hearing from the panel today on ways that we can continue to increase maritime safety in the maritime industry. And thank you, and I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for holding this roundtable industry experts and safety regulators to discuss how we can continue to improve the safety of passengers and crews on vessels. I will keep my remarks brief so that we can jump right into our discussion today. Over the past year, we have had to fight off repeated attacks on the Jones Act. As a strong supporter of the Jones Act, I have consistently fought efforts to undermine this law, including recent waivers issued by this administration. I oppose these waivers not only because the Jones Act is essential to our national security and maritime economy, but also because it plays a critical role in ensuring the safety of our nation's waterways. We cannot have foreign vessels that operate at lower safety standards, let me say that again, at lower safety standards, invading United States trade. We all have a stake in maintaining and growing a vibrant, diverse, and safe U.S. maritime industry. This was true in the late 18th century, and it remains true today. Safety is one of the issues that brought me to this subcommittee. We have made great progress in making small passenger vessels and vessels generally safer, but there is still work to be done. At the last subcommittee hearing, I pressed the Coast Guard on when we will get a safety management system rule, but I have not yet received a timeline. Today, I hope I can get some answers and also hear from industry on what progress is being done despite a slow-moving Coast Guard. Thank you, and with that, I yield back.
Gentleman yields. Gentleman yields.
Yes.
Testing. There we go. All right. Mr. Carball, thank you for that. I'm going to ask each participant, starting with Rear Admiral Barada, and going down the table briefly, to introduce yourselves and your organization. As we have a lot of participants here today, please keep your opening comments short, preferably no longer than 3 minutes. After that, we'll open it up for discussion. This is an informal event meant to encourage dialogue, so we won't be timing anyone here, but please respect each other's time so that we can all participate. With that, thank you all for participating today, and I'll turn it over to Rear Admiral Barada and recognize Admiral Select Comfer today. So thank you all again, and let's get started.
All right. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member Carbajal, Ranking Member Larson, members of the subcommittee. Thanks for having us in here today. Admiral Dave Barada, I am the Deputy Commandant for Operations Policy and Capabilities. Most recently served as the District Commander down in the Gulf, now the Heartland District, but used to be D8, still D8 in my heart for forever. I will keep my comments short. I appreciate the subcommittee having us in here together. We don't often get such a great cross-section of industry members to talk to at the same time, and looking forward to the dialogue and getting some input from both our overseers and our maritime industry. Thanks.
Hey, good morning, Mr. Chairman and ranking members and members of the subcommittee. Again, Captain Rob Comfort, Assistant Commandant for Prevention Policy, took over for Admiral Arguin just a month or so ago, and really excited to be coming into this new position at a very exciting time for Coast Guard prevention and the maritime industry, restoring American maritime dominance, and working with our partners on the Hill, working with our partners in industry, both international and domestic, to ensure we can maintain the safety, security, and stewardship of our marine transportation system. So really excited to be here again. Thank you for putting this roundtable on. I'm really excited for the discussion this morning.
Mr. Frankie, yeah, you're recognized, and we'll just go down the line and let everybody introduce themselves. And thank you for coming. I know you're about to hang it up.
Chairman Izzo, Ranking Member Carbajal, Ranking Member Larson, esteemed members of the subcommittee, thank you for the opportunity to participate in today's Maritime Roundtable. Our association represents commercial passenger vessels inspected by the Coast Guard throughout the state of California. And I'd like to take this opportunity first to thank and acknowledge the members, the committee, the Coast Guard as well, as we work through the interim rule for fire safety of small passenger vessels, working collaboratively with industry. These efforts ensured vessels were properly upgraded, inspected, and brought into compliance in a practical and effective manner. So with that, I'll save the rest for the conversations later. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Mr. Sargis.
Thank you, Chairman. Chairman Izzo, Ranking Member Carbajal, members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to testify today on marine safety. My name is Andrew Sargis. I am the 2026 President of the Passenger Vessel Association. I'm also the Chief of Operations of the Chicago Water Taxi and Wendella Tours and Cruises in Chicago. We have a fleet of 9 vessels on the Chicago River and Lake Michigan that do everything from ferry transportation service to sightseeing cruises and historical cruises as well. And it's been an honor to serve as the PVA president. And for Ranking Member Carbajal, PVA does have a voluntary SMS program that our members are eligible for today, and we're being proactive about this as well. So PVA represents an industry where we carry 200 million passengers a year aboard a diverse fleet of U.S.-built, U.S.-crewed, U.S.-flagged passenger vessels, everything from whale watching to ferries, sightseeing, dinner cruises, all sorts of passenger vessel services. We have a very long and productive partnership with the Coast Guard. They are not a distant regulator, but rather a daily partner for us. One of the big concerns we have is that as the Coast Guard undergoes its impressive modernization plan, that safety may become an afterthought as we turn to focus on the border, drug interdiction, military readiness. And that's something that has our members extremely concerned. If our vessels aren't inspected, then we can't take passengers. If our mariners can't get their credentials in a timely manner, then jobs are lost, revenue is lost, and it really becomes an issue about commerce on our waterways. We really want the U.S. Coast Guard's safety mission to be fully restored and emphasized. And as the Coast Guard undergoes its modernization plan, we hope that those resources, 15,000 new billets, investments in new technologies will be allocated to the safety program, not just the security side. We respectfully request that this committee ensure and consider the following. The Coast Guard's marine safety mission be fully resourced and effectively supported. The National Maritime Center is able to continue its critical mission, even during budget impasses, and that Congress direct a comprehensive assessment of ATON maintenance and placement needs on the Western rivers, and the Coast Guard's capacity to enforce existing regulation and deter illegal passenger activities be strengthened. And I just want to say, to close it out, this does not reflect a lack of confidence in the Coast Guard. We raise this because we believe deeply in the Coast Guard's mission and understand how essential it is to the safety of our industry and the American public. Thank you.
Mr. Kennedy. It's hard to see. Here you go.
Okay. Thank you, Chairman Ezell and Ranking Member Carbajal and members of the committee. Again, my name is David Kennedy. I'm the Manager of Government Affairs for the Boat Owners Association of the United States, Boat US. For over 60 years, Boat US has advocated for safe, accessible, and enjoyable boating. We represent more than 700,000 members nationwide, providing advocacy, education, an award-winning magazine, and on-water towing services. Recreational boating is a safe activity, and it has become safer over time. Since Congress established the National Boating Safety Program in 1971, which was championed by Boat US, I'll note, the estimated number of recreational boats has more than doubled, while reported incidents have fallen by more than half. That progress reflects substantial work by the Coast Guard, states, nonprofits, industries, and boaters themselves. We are proud of that record, but we also note the work is never finished. Boat US and the Boat US Foundation continue advancing education with our free online boating safety course. We message in the Boat US magazine about shared waterways. We've got something about working around dredges in our current issue. And we advocate for common sense regulations so that boating becomes safer still. I'd like to focus just on 3 things here as we speak. First, when we dealt with the issue of the North Atlantic right whale, we saw the automatic identification system potentially being used for enforcement. And for us, it must remain dedicated to safety. AIS supports situational awareness, collision avoidance, and search and rescue. Some recreational rules install it voluntarily, but using data generated by that system for enforcement or for other purposes besides safety would undermine that trust and could discourage its use, making waterways less safe. We oppose any use of AIS for anything other than safety. We'd also note that technology does not replace physical aids to navigation. Boaters rely on buoys, lights, day marks to identify channels, hazards, and safe water, especially in poor visibility, strong currents, or when electronics fail. We support recapitalizing the Coast Guard's buoy tender fleet, including the waterway commerce cutters, that maintain the thousands of aids to navigation nationwide. And third, I will note that the Coast Guard Office of Boating Safety is indispensable for supporting boating safety nationwide. Its support for state programs, education, training, data collection, and accident prevention has helped deliver decades of improvements. We thank the committee for reauthorizing the trust fund recently, and this supports the office and returns boater and angler resources back to the access and safety that we all count on. We look forward to the discussion with the committee and Coast Guard on practical policies to preserve trust, maintain navigation infrastructure, and improve safety for everyone on the water. Thank you.
Mr. Marlowe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member Carbajal, and distinguished members of the committee, and thank you for the opportunity to participate in today's Maritime Safety Roundtable. My name is David Marlowe. I serve as the Senior Director of Product Integrity for the Brunswick Corporation, and on behalf of that corporation and the recreational boating manufacturing industry, I appreciate the opportunity to be here today. I've spent more than 40 years in marine manufacturing and had the privilege of serving as the chairman of the National Boating Safety Advisory Committee, or BSAC, which advises the U.S. Coast Guard on recreational boating safety matters. The recreational boating industry is a uniquely American success story. 95% of boats sold in the United States are built right here in the U.S. Recreational boating generates approximately $230 billion in annual economic impact and supports more than 800,000 American jobs. But just as important, safety outcomes continue to improve. In 2024, recreational boating recorded the fewest fatalities in more than 50 years. That achievement did not happen by accident. It is the result of a successful partnership among industry, the Coast Guard, state boating agencies, safety organizations, and Congress. One of the foundations of that success is the Sport Fish Restoration and Boating Trust Fund. In more than 75 years, this user-funded program has supported boating safety initiatives that deliver measurable results. Trust fund resources help support boating safety education, law enforcement training, search and rescue capabilities, public awareness campaigns, and the development of technical safety standards through organizations such as the American Boat and Yacht Council and National Association of State Boating Law Administrators. Another critical component from that is the RBS National Nonprofit Organization Grant Program. These grants support programs that educate boaters, strengthen safety standards, provide training that helps reduce accidents and saves lives. We appreciate the committee's support for these programs and encourage continued funding without interruption. BSAC has also played an important role in improving boating safety. One notable example was its recommendation to require the use of an engine cutoff device on certain recreational boats. Congress acted on that recommendation, and today that safety measure is helping protect boat operators, passengers, law enforcement personnel, and others who share our waterways. As Congress considers the future of these programs, I respectfully offer 3 recommendations. First, the continued support of the Sportfish Restoration Boating Trust Fund. Second, continued support for boating safety grant programs that provide education, standards development, and law enforcement training. And third, reconstitute and reactivate the National Boating Safety Advisory Committee so that industry experts, boating organizations, and public safety stakeholders can continue to provide recommendations to the Coast Guard on emerging safety issues. These programs have helped create the safest era in modern recreational boating while supporting a thriving American manufacturing sector. They represent an effective public-private partnership that delivers real results for boaters, taxpayers, and our economy. So thank you again for holding this important discussion and your continued commitment to boating safety. Brunswick and the recreational boating industry stand ready to work with Congress and the Coast Guard to build on the significant progress we have already achieved together. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Carpenter, who has always got a smile on her face.
There's so much good stuff to talk about. Mr. Chairman, ranking members, thank you so much for holding this discussion today. Jennifer Carpenter, President and CEO of the American Waterways Operators, the trade association for the tugboat, towboat, and barge industry. I am hearing so much commonality from the Coast Guard, from my colleagues on this panel, my friends in labor over here. I think there are so many things that we share as we work to make sure that our waterways are safe, are environmentally protected, are secure. So we're in this together. I want to say 3 things. First, thank you for the bipartisan leadership that this subcommittee and this committee have shown for the Jones Act. Mr. Ranking Member, you said it well. The Jones Act is a safety issue. You would not be sitting around here with the associations representing the Jinzhou Wang and the Pixis Lambda with its Russian officers and cadets sailing in our domestic commerce, talking about how we can make the United States safer and more secure. So thank you for that. Two other things. Continuity of Coast Guard resources is absolutely critical. Lapse in appropriations for the Coast Guard directly undermines our shared objectives here, not only because Coast Guard resources, Coast Guard personnel are stretched more thin, but it is a source of great stress, anxiety, and sometimes it's a flight risk for the people who work in this industry when they have been training for years, they're ready to take the next step in their career, and then they can't get that raise in grade because despite all the good work that the Coast Guard and the folks at the National Maritime Center are doing, they don't have the appropriations to process that. So I hope we cannot find ourselves there again. And then the last thing I want to say is the importance of making sure that Coast Guard regulations balance safety, security, environmental stewardship with operational practicality. They've got a couple of really big rulemaking projects going on right now. Implementing the cybersecurity regulations is a huge one. I will say we've been very impressed and appreciative of the practical approach that they are taking, the ability to make use of tools like alternative security programs to do things in a practical way. Let's keep it going. We're woefully behind schedule on implementation of the Vessel Incidental Discharge Act, which Congress passed when my 20-year-old son was a really little guy. So come on, let's get it done. It's really important to keeping our waterways safe and doing that in a practical way. We know these things can be implemented successfully because we've seen a success story with Subchapter M and look forward to talking more about that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Humphrey.
Thank you, Chairman Ezell, Ranking Member Carbajal, Ranking Member Larson, members of the subcommittee for the chance to be here today. My name is Cameron Humphrey. I am here on behalf of Saronic, an autonomous vessel manufacturer and operator. To provide a quick introduction on Saronic, we are an American company based out of Austin, Texas, that builds autonomous surface vessels with the capability to go where humans shouldn't have to. We build and test these platforms in American waters, and as we grow, we recognize that introducing these vessels into a busy marine transportation system carries some unique challenges and real responsibility, making safety our foremost priority. To that end, Saronic continues to test and improve these operations of our platforms in the maritime environment every day. Through close coordination with the Coast Guard captains of the port, we're able to test our platforms in defined areas while ensuring the safety of other vessels around us. This includes the issuance of notices to mariners about our operations, running chase and support vessels, employing credentialed operators who provide continuous supervision with the ability to intervene as needed, and ensuring safe behavior around other vessel traffic. Not every variable can be accounted for when you're on the water, of course, and we've taken many actions to protect against potential failures within our systems. This includes layered fail-safe that address a number of potential issues that can occur, such as controlled behavior during loss of communications, return to safe state operations, and remote shutdown. Through continual testing, we have developed methods to ensure standardized structures for responding to incidents, in-depth analysis of our systems, and corrective action before resuming operations. Through all of this, Saronic has been able to structure our systems within a crowded maritime environment in the event of possible equipment failures. When another operator encounters one of our vessels, they can expect a vessel that is clearly identifiable and lit in accordance with the rules of the road, that behaves predictably and gives ways as the cool regs require, that is being actively monitored by a credentialed operator with the authority to intervene, and during testing has a support vessel close by. They should also be able to reach a human. Our goal is simple. Encountering a Saronic platform should be no less predictable or safe than encountering any other well-run vessel on the waterway. As an autonomous vessel operator, Saronic strives to be a safe and responsible user of our waterways. However, existing uncertainty in the regulatory framework makes that more difficult. Autonomous vessels, similar to traditionally manned vessels, require clear standards from the Coast Guard to help better govern our operations, inspection, and remote operator credentialing requirements. We need a stable framework developed by the Coast Guard with industry input to help guide our work. As the industry grows, clear and enforceable rules will serve every waterway user better than the case-by-case approach we currently operate under today. We're not asking for any sort of exemption, just some clarity within the existing rules to keep the system safe. We look forward to working with the committee, the Coast Guard, and members of this subcommittee and the industry to ensure the safety of everyone on our waterways. Thanks for having me here today, and I appreciate it. Look forward to discussion.
Mr. Woodley.
Yeah. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the subcommittee. Thank you for this opportunity to discuss Commercial Fishing Safety. My name is Chris Woodley, and I am the co-chair of the National Committee for the United Fishermen of Alaska. UFA is Alaska's premier statewide commercial fishing trade association. Our 36-member organizations include every major commercial fishery in Alaska, ranging from 28-foot gill netters fishing for salmon in Prince William Sound to 300-foot plus catcher-processor vessels that fish pollock and groundfish in the Bering Sea. When it comes to safety, our significant diversity leads to an immediate observation. A one-size-fits-all solution does not work. Decades of experience have shown that effective fishing vessel safety programs, whether they be focused on life-saving or communications equipment, emergency training, or vessel stability, must be practical, must take into account the wide variety of geography, scale, and fishery economics, and must be collaboratively developed with our regulating agencies, including fishery management agencies. Over the past 3 decades, Alaska's fishing industry has been a national leader in reducing fishing fatalities. When the Commercial Fishing Vessel Safety Act of 1988 was signed, over 32 Alaska fishermen were lost each year, and vessel losses with all hands were commonplace. Today, the picture is vastly different. The number of commercial fishing fatalities has declined by over 90%, from 32 fatalities a year down to 3 a year. In fact, twice within the last 10 years, Alaska's fishing industry experienced 0 fatalities, a previously unimaginable outcome. This remarkable result is because safety culture changed. Fishermen became true partners in collaboratively solving safety problems across multiple entities and agencies, including U.S. Coast Guard Fishing Vessel Safety Program, safety training programs such as AMSI and NPFVOA, and research agencies like the National Institute of Occupational Safety and Health. We found that when industry and government work together, we save lives. With that past experience as a lead-in, one of the Alaska fishing fleet's most significant challenges today is the need to replace our aging vessels. The average age of vessels operating in the North Pacific are over 40 years old, with a vast majority of them originally constructed between 1970 and 1989. UFA thanks the committee for its leadership in supporting the Title 11 provisions in the 2027 National Defense Authorization Act, which would incentivize new construction of fishing vessels by guaranteeing long-term loans with favorable financing, a program that has not been available to our sector in the past. This common sense change would provide much needed support and stability for new vessel construction, strengthen American shipbuilding, improve fleet safety, and increase the competitiveness of the domestic seafood industry. Modern vessels are safer vessels, and enabling fishermen to replace aging fleets represents one of the most effective long-term safety investments Congress can make. Whether it be on the water with existing boats or new construction in the shipyard, when safety regulations and standards are collaboratively developed based on real-world operations and practical implementation, fishermen embrace them. On behalf of the United Fishermen of Alaska, thank you for supporting America's commercial fishermen, and we look forward to working with all of you today.
Mr. Smith?
Chairman Ezell, Ranking Member Carbajal, and members of the committee, thank you for inviting the Offshore Marine Service Association to this roundtable. I'm Aaron Smith, and I'm President and CEO of the Offshore Marine Service Association. We're at a time where there's been massive interest in promoting the U.S. maritime industry. From the investments provided by this committee in the last year to MAP to the Bipartisan Ships Act, we're on the verge of providing tools the U.S. maritime industry needs to grow. As we take these steps, I make a simple observation. When the Coast Guard drafts, implements, and enforces a regulation, it is not required to ask a basic question. What effect will this have on the U.S. maritime industry? That may sound surprising, but explains many of the problems AMSA members face every day. Let me be clear, AMSA supports a strong Coast Guard. We support a strong marine safety mission. Our industry depends on safety. Our members, our mariners, our customers demand it. We are a safe industry. The problem is not high safety standards. The problem is that often regulations are issued without a consideration of whether they will actually improve the safety and implemented without consideration of the actual purpose of the regulation. In the discussion of the Jones Act waivers, AMSA members unfortunately compete every day against foreign flag vessels in United States waters. That gives us a unique perspective on how Coast Guard can unintentionally harm the U.S. maritime industry. One example is the Coast Guard's new maritime cybersecurity rule. Cybersecurity is absolutely essential, but the rule imposes more than $1 billion in compliance costs on U.S. flagged vessels, while completely exempting foreign flagged vessels we compete against on a daily basis. Ignoring foreign vessels or trusting that Vanuatu or the Marshall Islands or Panama are being equally stringent in a regulatory burden, it creates a regulatory burden for one fleet, but not a safer marine transportation system. We see the same patterns in other areas, whether it be the implementation of the OSV Chemical Code, the Safer Seas Act, or numerous other policies. Well-intentioned regulations often make American operators less attractive from a cost perspective than their foreign competitors without producing a corresponding level in safety. The structural problem is the Coast Guard's statutory marine safety mission tells the service to promote safety, but does not require it to consider how its decisions affect the U.S. maritime industry. Further, the Coast Guard's operational flexibility is essential for responding to local conditions. However, when disparate marine safety units issue policies with national implications without consideration of the national impact, the harm is to the American maritime system. They become an afterthought rather than part of the decision-making process. Put another way, we can pump even more billions into the Coast Guard and provide even more incentives for the U.S. maritime industry. But if a marine inspector in Houma, Louisiana can virtually halt the advancement of the U.S. maritime, of the offshore industry, these investments are not going to help. AMSA believes there are two reforms that can help correct this. First, Congress should amend the Marine Safety Mission to require the service to consider the effects of regulations and policy on the U.S. maritime industry while continuing to fulfill its safety mission. Just as the Coast Guard implements its icebreaker and rescue missions with due regard to national security, it should implement its marine safety mission with due regard to the impacts on the commercial industry. This would not replace MARAD's statutory role. It would simply recognize a practical reality. Many Coast Guard actions are issued through policy letter, guidance, or other local actions that never receive interagency review. MARAD cannot protect the U.S. maritime industry from that which it cannot see. The Coast Guard, therefore, should itself be required to consider those impacts as part of its decision-making process. Second, Congress should establish a civilian Secretary of the Coast Guard and Assistant Secretary for Marine Safety. Every other armed service has civilian leadership that provides for policy direction, coordination, accountability, and oversight. Yet the Coast Guard, which is both an armed service and a significant economic regulator, does not have the civilian leadership to help ensure that regulatory decisions consistently reflect national priorities and are implemented consistently. America needs both the safest maritime industry in the world and the strongest maritime industry in the world. Those goals are not in conflict. In fact, they should reinforce one another. But when only one is being considered, neither goal will be met. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today. Look forward to the discussion.
Thank you. Mr. Josberger.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, the members of the committee. Representative Carbajal, Larson, Garamendi, you've been our rocks, our anchors, the U.S. flag. I can't thank you guys enough. I'm Captain Don Josberger. I'm the president of the International Organization of Master Mates and Pilots Union, founded in 1887. Our union represents U.S. Coast Guard licensed masters and mates working aboard U.S. flagged commercial vessels operating in the foreign and domestic trades, as well as licensed and unlicensed mariners who are on tugs, ferries, dredges, and other vessels operating throughout the United States. We also provide the most up-to-date and comprehensive training through our Maritime Institute of Technology and Graduate Studies with facilities both on the East and West Coast. Major facility is right here at the BWI Airport right in Linthicum, which is also our headquarters. From maritime labor's perspective, there is no better way to enhance maritime safety and protect life and property at sea than by ensuring that a vessel, regardless of type and size, operates with a trained and qualified crew. Speaking for the MMP and other maritime unions, the American Maritime Officers, we're over there, and the Seafarers International Union behind me. We are keenly aware that the men and women responsible for vessel navigation and watchstanding and for the monitoring and maintaining of engines and other machinery are the first line of defense against shipboard accidents. As a result, maritime labor is committed to providing U.S. flag vessels with the best trained mariners available anywhere in the world. Consequently, as this committee, the Coast Guard, and our industry look for ways to better protect against accidents at sea and to more efficiently and effectively minimize the damage when accidents occur, we suggest the following for your consideration. Here it comes. Manning levels. Increased paperwork, regulations, obligations, and other responsibilities placed on the crew can lead to fatigue and otherwise create an environment that threatens the safety of life and property at sea. It is therefore essential that the Coast Guard ensure that the COI requires the necessary number of shipboard personnel. I have a couple of appeals right now for foreign vessels that we gladly reflagged into U.S. flag vessels, and they had the right manning, at least on the deck officer side. We should have the same manning. I need whatever support you guys can to look into that. Let's spend some time looking at the SMS and how many hours it takes to enforce that SMS. That's all I ask. I have a great relationship with Captain Confer. We've had discussions about this, and I look forward to the continuation of it. 2, autonomous vessels. We understand that the TNI committee has been asked to authorize various pilot programs pertaining to the operation of autonomous vessels engaged in research and other functions and operating specific limited to their areas. We believe that in order to better protect the maritime safety and operating functions of the vessels must be performed by licensed and credentialed United States citizens and under the standards of the Coast Guard. 3, last, incident response. Since it is naive to believe that we can safeguard against and prevent all accidents from occurring, it is important to have the necessary response mechanism in place when an accident does occur. The establishment, this is why, for example, we have proposed that Congress authorize the establishment of the Center of Expertise directly related to the maritime firefighting and salvage. As this committee knows, American ports and waterways are a critical component of our nation's infrastructure, and yet they remain vulnerable to maritime casualties, vessel fires, and other events capable of disrupting commerce, military readiness, and national security. At the same time, the United States currently lacks a centralized national capability dedicated to the prevention, preparedness, response, and recovery phases of major maritime incidents, including marine firefighting. We believe that the establishment of the Ports and Waterways Joint National Center of Expertise would provide this necessary collaborative framework to address this need. We all know 3 years ago the tremendous, terrible accident that happened on the Garamendi Line's vessel in Newark. 2 firemen were lost. It'll happen again if we don't think about setting up this facility, this expertise center. Okay, that concludes my opening comments. I look forward to questions and your discussion.
Thank you. I'll start with a broad question to get the ball rolling to everybody. What have been the most successful policies that have helped improve safety in the U.S. flag fleet's domestic operations? How would you expand or enhance these policies to further enhance safety and reinvigorate our maritime industry? Alternatively, are there requirements that don't work very well that should be adjusted? I'll just throw that out there. Anybody?
I'm going to put in a plug for safety management systems and reliance on Coast Guard approved third parties with appropriate oversight. I think that the ability of the Coast Guard and the tugboat, towboat, and barge industry to successfully integrate 5,000 towing vessels into the Coast Guard's inspected vessel fleet, improving safety and not disrupting maritime commerce would not have been possible without the towing safety management system option, which about 70% of towing vessels are using as their vehicle for compliance with that rule. So Coast Guard accepted safety management systems, Coast Guard approved third-party organizations are force multipliers for the Coast Guard. They are a way to ensure that limited Coast Guard resources can be targeted where they're most needed, and they are a way that companies that have made significant investments in safety management systems, third-party oversight, rigorous crew training, et cetera, can reap some operational and efficiency benefit as a result of that. So that's my success story, and my how do we keep getting better is let's keep working to smooth out the edges, which we're doing with the Coast Guard. We've seen some good work over the last couple of years. We're just finishing the regulations were published 10 years ago. We're just finishing the first COI renewal cycle, making sure that we don't have Coast Guard inspectors and third-party organizations duplicating, tripping over each other, just making sure we call the ball. Who's going to clear that 835? So I think we're making progress in that area, and I would just look forward to continued progress with appropriate oversight from this committee.
Thank you. Does anybody else like to add to that?
Mr. Chairman, if I could.
Yes.
I would say the greatest way to improve safety is by consistent application of regulations and laws to U.S. flag vessels and foreign flag vessels. A great example of this is that when this committee, and working with many of you, when we passed the Safer Seas Act, part of that was a requirement that cameras be included. And for one of the first times that I can ever think of, and Mr. Larson, and Mr. Carbajal, I remember working directly with your staffs on this very provision, was if you're going to have cameras on U.S. flag vessels working in offshore energy, those same camera requirements should be on the foreign flag vessels that do the exact same thing. That was put into statute through your wisdom. That requirement is being heavily enforced on OMSA members, and we're talking about an expensive requirement. It's more than $100,000 per vessel a lot of times. It is not being applied to foreign vessels. It's not even on the port state control inspection checklist. So that's something that was a statutory requirement that is costing OMSA members money, real dollars. I think we estimated it, compliance cost industry-wide $88 million, not being applied on the foreign vessels that do the exact same things on the exact same routes as OMSA members. So I'd say consistency is both the example, the pro example, and the con example right there.
Very good. Anybody else? Go ahead, Mr. Woodley.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, thank you. I guess going to the other side, and I was serving the Coast Guard for 24 years, so I appreciate all the work that you guys are doing, but I do have some suggestions. So we talked a little bit about the need to build new fishing vessels in the United States. Coast Guard has issued policy on that, and it breaks it down into two separate categories, over 79 feet, under 79 feet. Coast Guard hit it right on the head perfectly with the standards for over 79 feet. However, the policy guidance for under 79 feet requires a safety standard that does not exist, and so it puts vessel owners in a catch-22. They can't build new boats without a safety standard, but there's not a safety standard, so you can't build new boats. So this has been an ongoing concern, and it was an issue that the Coast Guard Fishing Vessel Safety Advisory Committee had started addressing. I guess it's been like 2 years, and I'm not quite sure when it got shut down. But it's imperative that advisory committee get reconstituted and begin to address these important issues, because if Congress does in fact provide the opportunity to get long-term financing to build new boats, we need to have the policies in place and the guidance in place on how to do that.
Thank you. I want to move to Admiral Barada. As maritime technology evolves, I worry that the Coast Guard may not be keeping pace. How are you balancing safety while not stifling innovation? Are you concerned that if the Coast Guard waits until the IMO finalizes its autonomous regulations in the 2030s, you'll be too late to meaningfully give a growing sector guidance and certainty?
Thanks for the question, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I think the concern behind your question is recognized by the Coast Guard. IMO's mass code is really targeted at larger vessels, and I do think everyone would agree, like, that size of over 500 gross ton vessels that are coming into the States. At the smaller level, we can't wait. I mean, there's technology, there's companies, represented here, there's other companies all throughout the country that are already operating. And so the Coast Guard, we can't wait. I think at the local port level, the Harbor Safety Committee, Port Coordination Team, the captain of port level, we're already having those conversations, and we need to start building that foundation for the framework that Mr. Humphrey mentioned earlier. And so we want to move ahead, and allow those technologies to exist in proper settings, with proper oversight, escort vessels and those kind of things out of the channel that aren't going to impact the normal waterways. I mean, there's so many things that happen in the waterway, from weather to just operations that are unexpected. And, the more vessels we put into this system, the waterway is not getting any bigger. And so it's going to get more condensed. But we need to accommodate autonomous vessels in that system, and we got to figure out the way to do that. And that's why we're putting it out there right now, as kind of this info gathering at the captain of port level, interacting with individual companies that want to operate, and then gathering that data so that we can inform that framework.
Thank you. Mr. Carbajal.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I again will yield to Ranking Member Larson. Thank you.
Thank you. Admiral Comfort, turn your microphone on to get ready.
I'm ready, sir.
Great. So in the latest Coast Guard Act, Congress required the Coast Guard to update the Canada-U.S. Joint Marine Pollution Contingency Plan. That's become more important in the wake of the announcement of a new Canadian pipeline, whose terminus will be in Roberts Bank, just about 7 miles north of my district. That will lead to a significant increase in tanker traffic. Has the Coast Guard begun discussions on the Joint Marine Pollution Contingency Plan? And if you're not the person to answer it, will you send me that person?
Yes, sir. I may defer to Admiral Broad if he knows. I'm not as familiar with the marine pollution in the CAN-US agreement, but we can take that as a get back for you, sir.
Yeah? Admiral Broad, something else?
We'll have to get back to you on that one, sir.
Yeah. Are you tracking the Canadian decisions?
We are tracking that decision. I haven't seen anything on the progress of the plan itself.
Right.
That's what we need to get back to.
It's been a decision, but there's nothing really on paper yet. But we shouldn't wait for paper, in my view. My constituents aren't, so I'd ask you not to wait as well. Great, thanks. Admiral Barada, marine inspectors ensure the ships follow safety, security, environmental laws, so on. Unfortunately, Coast Guard is short about 300 marine inspectors. What are you doing to address that shortage of marine inspectors?
So steadily over the last 5 or 10 years, with some support from the Congress, we've put a couple programs in place to kind of target that, to grow from within at a faster rate, and then to build up that apprentice, journeyman, master system that we've had. A couple things we've done is one, we have started targeting at the enlisted rate, at the enlisted marine inspector rate, and then bringing them into that apprentice so that they get brought in, they're trained as apprentices, then brought in as chief warrant officer inspectors. And that way, the marine inspectors who know our offshore industry, who know our tugs and barges, who know our deep drafts, get to stay into the system for 5, 10, 15 years longer. And so through that, we've grown about 100 or so marine inspectors over the last 4 to 5 years.
Mr. Woodley, could you address perhaps the impact of the shortage of marine inspectors, say, on the fleets when they're down in Seattle, or when they're doing their maintenance turns? Get that microphone over.
Oh, sorry. Through the chair, Mr. Larson. Over the last year, we have experienced down in Sector Puget Sound region a lack of fishing vessel safety examiners to the extent that folks from fishing vessel safety examiners from other units, primarily in Alaska, had to come down to Seattle to help them with the workload. And we appreciate the ability of the Coast Guard to be flexible and to do that. But a large percent of the Alaska fishing fleet is based out of the Puget Sound region and along with its own, local fleets. And that service is really critical to the safety of our fleets and for our operations. So it is something that I believe it's getting better. Last I checked with my contacts there, but I think it's still an outstanding issue.
Finally, Ms. Carpenter, could you address the same question? How it's impacting your folks?
Yeah, I would say, as I mentioned earlier, Coast Guard approved TPOs have helped, but ensuring consistent population of Coast Guard, inspectors commensurate to the workload is really important to ensure that consistent policy application that Aaron was talking about. And we do sometimes see mismatches. So it's just Coast Guard, a properly resourced Coast Guard, critical for marine safety in this country.
And thank you. And one last point I'll just make to everybody. Again, my first point about the Jones Act waiver, my expectation is that everybody in the industry should be either through your association or individually weighing in on the fallacy of the reason for this waiver, as well as their then next pushing to explain to the public why an extension of the waiver is absolutely unnecessary. In fact, the establishment was absolutely unnecessary as well. Thanks. That's all.
I've taken a 2-hour break from doing that, and I'm going to get right back to it as soon as we finish up here.
Well, thank you, Chairman. And I do think that it's important for us to be well-informed before we make decisions. And so thank you all for being here today to have this conversation. Chairman, I will say I think that I would be better informed if we went with Mr. Woodley to go fishing in Alaska and then did to do some sport fishing in California. We could even stay at Mr. Carbajal's house on that one. Yeah, there you go. Yeah. No, but thank you all for being here. We'll start with the Rear Admirals. Do you feel like the Coast Guard is addressing the risk of cybersecurity attacks against these autonomous vessels?
Question, Representative McDowell. So cyber, yes, I think we're taking that extremely seriously, and not just against autonomous vessels. I think looking across the marine transportation system at our regulated fleet, our regulated facilities, we have our cybersecurity rule that we put in place a year ago, and working with our companies over the next year to get those cyber assessments done, make sure they have the training for their facility operators and their vessel operators to meet the standards that they need to identify IT and operational technology vulnerabilities within their systems, and then put their plans in place to make sure that our vessels and facilities are protected, the MTS is protected. So I think with autonomous vessels in particular, there's specific vulnerabilities that, because there's a lot more automation and IT and OT systems on board those boats, so we have to take a closer look at that. But through our existing regulations and the cybersecurity plans that we require, we do feel like we're addressing that risk adequately. And to Mr. Smith's point, the issue of cyber on foreign vessels, we are working through the IMO, the International Maritime Organization, to look at how we can do something similar, perhaps, on the foreign vessel fleet.
We'd love it. Mr. Humphrey, do you think that the regulations on autonomous vessels are keeping pace with the new technologies?
I think that there's a lot of room for the regulations to be updated to fit the emergence of autonomous vessels. To talk to the cybersecurity question real quick, I will speak for Saronic specifically. Our vessels are purpose-built with cybersecurity being an underlying aspect of our autonomy stack that's built in and not just bolted on, right? Our vessels are built for contested environments, so it's something that we take very seriously. And in the case of our boat was used in the pilot rescue about a month ago in the Strait of Hormuz, that was a GPS-denied, heavily contested area that our vessel was able to operate in successfully. So that's just an example of the cybersecurity protocols that we have built in. But to reiterate some of the points I made in my opening statement, I think that there are kind of three clear things that we need the regulations to address for autonomous vessels. We need clear operating standards. We need a clear inspection regime so that we have a standard to build our platforms against, and we need requirements to measure the remote operating credentialed mariners that we're hiring, so that it's not just a company standard that we're basing our hiring decisions on for those mariners. It's a Coast Guard standard that the rest of the industry can build to.
Great, thank you. Finally, Mr. Woodley, why is our domestic fishing fleet filled with so many older vessels?
That light's pretty weak. Through the chair, Mr. McDowell, in Alaska in particular, you know, there was a huge rush back in the 1970s and the 1980s as king crab fishery exploded in Alaska. That fishery collapsed, and a lot of those boats, which had been prior oil service vessels, were converted to other pot boats or to trawl vessels and things like that. And the reality is fishermen want to keep working those platforms as long as they can, and we're just getting to the kind of like the service life end of those fleets. It is incredibly expensive to build a new boat now in the United States. For some of the fleets that I represent, a new boat can be $150 million up to $250 million for a single catcher processor vessel. There is a very limited number of shipyards in the United States that could even consider building something like that. So, I think these are new boats are very sophisticated, very technologically heavy. There's a very limited number of places where it can actually be built, and when you look into all of the costs associated, it's a hard thing a hard hump to get over, and that's why the potential for financing, long-term financing, will be really important.
Did the price of vessels, like during COVID, personal or recreational, the price of those boats went through the roof?
Yeah.
Did the same thing happen to those types of vessels?
Short answer is yes. There's not been a lot of new boats being built, so it's hard to draw those direct comparisons. The last boat that was built in the group that I work for was built in 2018, so just before COVID. There's not been a new boat built since then, but I would imagine that it's gone up significantly.
Sure. Great. Well, thank you all very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Admiral Comfer, it should come as no surprise by now that one of my biggest concerns is the lack of safety regulation in the small passenger vessel sector. I asked last hearing, and I will ask again, when can we expect the final rule on safety management systems to be finalized?
Okay. Thank you for the question, Ranking Member. So again, we take safety of small passenger vessels extremely seriously. I think it is a success story with the interim final rule, what we were able to do with fire safety and night watchmen and increasing safety standards on the post-conception to ensure we don't have another tragic incident like that. We are pressing forward on safety management system rule. There are some interim things that we are doing right now with the streamlined inspection program that I think we talked a little bit about with the Passenger Vessel Association opening comments, and looking at establishing programs for companies to institute safety into their a safety culture onto their vessels, and have programs in place where we can audit those and ensure that safety isn't just a one-time-a-year Coast Guard inspection. It's an everyday thing for our crews on these boats, and there's a verifiable process that we have to audit those things and ensure that mariners are doing what they're supposed to be doing, working with the Coast Guard to make sure that the deficiencies are correct.
Admiral, I certainly understand the extensive work you guys do, but on the final rule, is there a light at the end of the tunnel? Is there a general time frame?
I don't have a time frame for you right now, Representative Carbajal.
If you could get an estimated time frame at some point, it would be great.
Yes, sir.
Or else it'll be another 20 years. And I don't think public safety can wait that long. The remainder of the requirements, such as fire suppression and egress, remain as an interim rule. Are we going to see final rules for these as well? Or again, is it going to be interim, a lot of great work, but no final product?
So our intent is, yes, to get to a final rule eventually. I don't have a time frame for you right now.
In 2025, a report from the GAO found that the Coast Guard has not developed a system to measure the performance of third-party organizations, as called for in the 2018 Coast Guard guidance following the passage of the HAM Alert Maritime Safety Act. I think Ms. Carpenter touched on this as well. Admiral Comfort, where does the Coast Guard stand in the development of a system to measure performance?
Okay, so we have done a lot of work over the past several years with third parties, and we have a lot of third parties to be fair. We have our third parties that work on our towing vessel fleet, our third-party organizations. We have alternative compliance programs where we work through various class societies that do work on the Coast Guard's behalf, and we have a auditing office in CVC4 and Coast Guard headquarters that is working on policy to shore up our system of auditing third parties and making sure that the work that they're doing on the Coast Guard's behalf is safe, and we have key metrics that we can hold these third parties to ensure that they're carrying out that work on our behalf safely.
Admiral Comfort, you would make a great member of Congress because you're great at filibustering and not directly answering, but thank you very much. Mr. Josberger, the advent of new technologies in the maritime sector coinciding with the desire to advance and reshape the workforce has the potential to change the industry completely, and hopefully for the better. With that in mind, what are the biggest concerns you or your members have in a time where there may not be any guiding rules or regulations?
Thank you, Representative Carbajal. It'll be a disaster, a complete disaster, on all accounts. Safety would be out the window, wouldn't recommend it. Coast Guard has a lot of profound challenges with the resources they have, and I've heard about how we're short. How many Marine inspectors? Did I see 300? I think you could tie that directly into what happened there in the bridge somewhat, in Maryland. My issue with manning is because they don't have the resources they really need. And as far as this autonomous stuff goes, you're going to need somebody who's going to, if you're going to have somebody ashore that's got a license, he's got to have some, I would say, experience. Because if you're going to try to do autonomy without someone that's got the experience, you're looking at another disaster. And I don't know how you're going to do the lookout situation and all that. Disaster.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I yield back.
Everybody.
Isn't it time for a Republican? Thank you very much.
Mike.
For all the witnesses, thank you for your testimony. There's a constant theme here, and that is the U.S. Coast Guard, is it up to the task? Apparently not, listening to your testimony. And the question I would have for the Coast Guard in writing to this committee is how are you going to staff up to address the issues that we have before you? I know there's additional budget. I know that you're out trying to recruit, but you're woefully short in almost every part of your work. So in writing to at least me, and I would hope to the committee also, I'd like to know your staffing plans and how you intend to deploy those staff to meet the issues that have been put before you by the witnesses here ranging from autonomous to ships in the Alaska region. Secondly, I want to talk about the inconsistency of the administration. The President issued a national maritime strategy, presumably to rebuild the American maritime industry. And then almost immediately, with the Section 301 report that was done by U.S. trade representatives, that showed that China is unfairly subsidizing its shipping industry. And so what did the President do? He stopped the implementation of the 301 penalties, which would fund activities at the ports. Okay, that waiver, that stop of the 301, is likely to continue for about another 100 days. And the question before us all is the administration, the President, in his negotiations with Xi Jinping, going to once again give up America's advantage for some deal that he wants to cut with China? Big question, very, very important question for the issue of the maritime industry in the United States. And if that's not enough, the Jones Act has been discussed here by several of you. That waiver is scheduled to end in about, 34 days? Is the President going to renew that waiver to the detriment of the American maritime industry? Whether it's, I don't know what's going to be the fishing industry, but apparently your fish have to get on some sort of a ship to get to wherever they're going, or maybe on an airplane. Any way you look at it, the Jones Act waiver is a major problem for the American maritime industry. And the question for this administration is the President going to continue to say, on one hand, we've got a national maritime strategy that will build the American maritime industry, and then on the other hand, gut what presumably he wants to do? We need consistency here. And frankly, we need loud voices. We need loud voices from this committee and also from the various participants here at this hearing. If you're going to be silent, you're going to get screwed. If you're willing to speak up and fight for what you need and what the law would allow you to have, you got a chance of overcoming the inconsistency of this administration. My final point, I'm not asking many questions, I'm making points here. My final point is that we are very, very close to putting into the NDAA, don't know if it's going to be taken up, don't know, we've got some issues out there, the SHIPS Act. If that were to happen, we have an opportunity to put in place a major, significant increase in the American support for the domestic shipping industry. Now, some of you are not interested in shipping internationally, but you sure want to go to some port somewhere that's fishing or wherever you happen to be. The SHIPS Act provides significant funding to upgrade all ports, large and small. So if you're on, I don't know, out of Anchorage or wherever you happen to be, the SHIPS Act is going to be very, very important. For those of you that are interested in building ships, the energizing the American shipping industry that is part of the SHIPS Act apparently has been stripped out by the geniuses in the Rules Committee. Now, why the Speaker and the second in command of the Republican caucus, who happen to represent one of the major shipbuilding places in America, Louisiana, has allowed the energizing to be stripped out of that bill. We're going to fight this all the way, but for those two people, they're harming their own district, their own industry in the Gulf states. Some 30 ships would be built over the next decade if the energizing part of the SHIPS Act remains in place. Those are LNG carriers, those are bulk oil, diesel, other distillate carriers. Maybe that's not important to them, but it's sure important to the American shipping industry. So my message to all of you, if you're interested in a small port someplace that's antiquated and falling down, the SHIPS Act's important. If you're interested in offshore support, the SHIPS Act's important. If you're interested in the support or the rebuilding of the American maritime industry, then pay attention. The 301 waiver by the president cut some deal with Xi Jinping. We don't know what the deal is, but we do know that it's certainly going to harm America, at least on the 301 issue, the Jones Act waiver, and finally back to the Coast Guard. You have plans to grow. You have money to grow it. Do you have an organizational plan in place to hire, to find and to hire and to train? The general attitude of the Coast Guard through time is, oh, we'll take care of it. Well, you better. And I want to know precisely how you intend to do that. Where you're going to place those people, what they're going to do. And by the way, I know you're very, very busy with drug interdiction. And probably most of your vessels are going to be for that purpose. And you're not likely to spend time on safety. So, enough said. With that, I yield back.
Mr. Webster's recognized.
Thank you, Chairman. Rear Admiral, is things are rapidly developing and changing, technology in itself, especially as it relates to autonomous vehicles. Is the Coast Guard doing, what is the Coast Guard doing to make sure regulations keep pace?
Mr. Webster, good morning. Good to see you, sir. So one of the things that we've done just recently is we've published some guidance out to the captain of the port level to start cataloging and also to kind of figure out what type of operations, what type of, and we're mainly focusing at the smaller autonomous systems right now that can operate in these local areas, and ensuring that every captain of the port zone has locations, or at least has the operations oversight in place working with these companies to ensure that we can kind of start to figure out what type of operations people want to do, how they will interact with the rest of the maritime public. And so we're going to use that over the next 6 to 12 months to figure out how we want to start developing a framework to provide some guidance to the industry.
Okay, and another question. President Trump has said he wanted to build America shipbuilding as a priority. Many of us at this table are supportive of that, want to see it happen. It does little good to build vessels if our regulatory environment prevents U.S. vessels from being able to compete with the foreign flag vessels. What's the Coast Guard doing to ensure our regulations are ensuring safety without stifling the U.S. vessels and their operation?
Thank you for the question, Congressman Webster. So when the Maritime Action Plan came out, I guess it was a little over a year ago, we met with many of our industry partners, many of them here at the table here today, and said, hey, what can we do as the Coast Guard from a regulatory, from a policy standpoint to make your industry better, or make your lives a little bit easier without significantly impacting safety? And we took a lot of their input. We have a list that we put together. Some of it is our own regulatory projects that we were already working. A lot of the input we got from industry. I think it's 400 or so regulatory projects that we have identified and kind of ranked what has the most impact, what's the most easiest to get across the line. And we use that, and the Unified Agenda was just published a few weeks ago with the top ones that we're working on right now. So there's a lot on the regulatory side for us to get after. From the policy side, we've already made some pretty big policy initiatives in alignment with the Maritime Action Plan. One is We streamlined the maritime security program, the NAVIC that we put out, and kind of opened the aperture on what we accept into the program and kind of not ease the standards, but streamline that program to make it a little easier for folks that want to use that to bring deep draft boats into the U.S. fleet. We did some policy on underwater dry docking or underwater survey in lieu of dry docking. And again, several other policy initiatives. Regs take a little bit more time, but we've got some policy that we're getting after right now, again, to save industry some of their resources, do things to make the lives of industry a little bit easier where it doesn't impact safety. And I think there's a lot we've done, a lot we're trying to get after, sir.
Mr. Humphrey, you want to comment?
Yes, sir. Thank you. I just wanted to comment on the earlier framework that the Coast Guard's been working on. So I just want to thank the Coast Guard for the partnership and being able to work with local captains of the port in our testing in defined areas. It's been a great partnership, and it's allowed us to really continue to test our platforms pretty consistently. That said, it's a case-by-case basis, and it's subject to changing personnel, and it can be inconsistent at times. So a more stable set regulatory framework for us to operate within, where it's not negotiating with local captains of the port each time, would be very, very helpful for our operations. The IMO Mass Code that was published a few months ago is a great step forward, but it's on the member nations of the IMO to set their regulations in place for the enforcement of it. And there's other countries out there, the UK, Australia, that are taking steps to get their regulatory frameworks in place. And the United States is starting to fall behind that. So we're potentially going to be in a position where we're not going to be able to lead on how that regulatory framework develops, and instead we're going to be following the other countries that are putting theirs in place. So I thank the Coast Guard for all the work in helping us perform those operations, and we look forward to working together on helping get those regulations, a more stable framework in place.
Mr. Smith, do you have a response to that second question I asked about are we striking the right balance, or is there imbalance here?
Well, Mr. Chairman Emeritus here, let me just say that we do appreciate the Coast Guard's efforts on deregulation activities. As part of last year, the Coast Guard was holding U.S. flag vessels to a dissimilar standard to foreign flag vessels in what are called portable accommodation modules. These are the containers that are put on the back deck of a vessel to customize it to a certain purpose. The Coast Guard had originally had regulations, or actually a policy letter, that was just, was never subject to notice and comment, was never subject to a cost-benefit analysis, and it caused U.S. flag vessels to have 2 inspections, a plan approval and then a physical inspection, anytime you put on or took off a PAM, portable accommodation module. Foreign vessels had none of that. So for a job that was a foreign vessel could do in U.S. waters, it could do it tomorrow. We had a 6-week delay. Coast Guard amended that PAM policy letter. We are now on a level playing field with the foreign vessels on that. That's a great success story. It's putting Americans to work. Additionally, as part of the administration's regulatory reduction effort, we did send Admiral Comfer's predecessor a letter recommending that 95 regulations called type approval regulations be revoked. This requires an additional Coast Guard inspection of equipment and equipment facilities, manufacturing facilities for vessel equipment, goes above and beyond the international standard. I'm waiting for a response to that letter from Admiral Comfer, so sure I'll get it soon, sir. So, I think that's a good success story, and one we're still waiting for an answer there on how we can work together to that point. Thank you for the question, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you all for appearing. Really appreciate it. This was helpful. Yield back.
There we go. Sometimes you got to double tap. Everyone, thank you so much. I've got 2 questions today. So first of all, thank you so much for being here. Many of you are familiar with me, proud to represent Coast Guard City, USA, the original Coast Guard City in Grand Haven. Honored to serve on this committee and support our coasties in a number of different ways. I am incredibly supportive of the Coast Guard deploying new innovative technologies to ensure service member and mariner safety. However, no technology can provide the same safety as a well-trained and resourced coastie. Even as we develop these autonomous, supportive vessels, it should never be considered in replacement of our coasties, only to help support them be the best, strongest, most nimble that they can be. I'm so glad to see a lot of heads nodding there. And I've previously expressed concern with potential closures of search and rescue units across the country, even some that are threatened within my district in Muskegon. I'll open this question up to the panel, whoever wants to jump in first, but obviously hoping you all will jump in as well. I'd love to hear how closures of Coast Guard search and rescue units might undermine the progress that we have made in maritime safety.
Congresswoman, Andrew Sardis from Chicago, Illinois, other side of Lake Michigan. And we hear from our members in the Passenger Vessel Association, particularly those on inland waterways in the Great Lakes, that they are starved for search and rescue resources. We've heard stories of social media groups gathering Good Samaritans to go out and perform rescues, and local police and fire units trying to fill in for search and rescue teams. One of the big concerns we have with the Coast Guard modernization effort and Force Design 2028 is it seems to treat safety as a bit of an afterthought, and we're worried that critical safety resources are still being siphoned off, and that of the 15,000 new billets, of the investments in autonomous technologies, that those are all primarily going to be focused on things like military readiness and drug interdiction, border control, and not focused on safety on our waterways. In addition, we have a very big problem of illegal passenger vessels for hire on the Great Lakes. These operators, they flout federal safety requirements, avoid inspections. They place a lot of our citizens at risk. Fatalities are not uncommon. And we do understand that some Coast Guard areas have no law enforcement resources to even address this. And as you know, and as Chairman Ezell knows, who is in law enforcement, when enforcement disappears, the bad guys just get bolder, and that's what we're seeing in places like Chicago, Pittsburgh, Mackinac. So it is a big problem. We do hope that, and are told that the small boat stations will be restored, but this is something that has had a profound impact. We do want to thank the panel, though, for the GAO study that you guys supported on illegal passenger for hire operations. We do think that this report will show the scope of the problem. We hope it doesn't sit on a shelf, and that it will result in a national policy and meaningful legislation.
That's great.
So,
yeah, excited about
Thank
that
you.
too.
Congresswoman, if I could, I'd like to applaud the Coast Guard on an innovative use in a similar vein and one that could be expanded. Late last year, the Coast Guard put out an RFP on a way to support Coast Guard cutters so that the military assets could continue and spend more of their time doing military work via the support of commercial, basically off-the-shelf vessels that had already been built by commercial industry. The first of those vessels has now been put onto charter to the Coast Guard. It was actually built in 2010 via a better improvement of the Jones Act, a great example of it working correctly. CBP started to not perfectly, better enforce the Jones Act. Domestic industry responded by building what are called subsea construction vessels. One of those vessels is now on charter to the Coast Guard in an innovative program supporting their drug interdiction efforts. Very same principle and standards could be used on search and rescue and other non-homeland security missions.
Thank you. That's agreed. Very good point and well said. Yeah. I know.
Yeah. So David Kennedy with Boat US, individual boat owners. I appreciate you raising that concern. That is one that we watch. Also, we particularly support the Pay Our Coast Guard Act. I think we hear from our members when we do go through these shutdowns about just they interact with these small boat stations, very important. And so yeah, the continued support for that infrastructure is key. I'll also note, we have our on-water towing assistance fleet that, supplements and works closely with their local Coast Guard offices. So an important partnership, but absolutely keeping that
Yep.
running and is important to our members.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Comments from the Coast Guard?
Skolton, good morning. It's nice to see you, especially a couple weeks here before Coast Guard Day. Really.
Will you be out?
I am not planning to be there this year,
Join
but
us. We
I
have a
should.
Coast Guard festival in the district.
Oh, very nice.
Yes.
Okay, you talked me into it.
It's beautiful. Join us on the boat.
Just along the lines of the staffing shortages at the stations, we've gotten a lot of support. We were kind of in the trough just a couple years ago when I was in charge of the Personnel Service Center, almost 10% short of our enlisted workforce, which kind of forced us into some of these scheduled mission station aspects, especially along the lakes. There were a lot of those. And so, but now that we've gotten support for recruiting, we've opened up a lot of recruiting centers. The buses are full to Cape May. I see Mr. Van Drew, again, smiles, just good news stories all around. I think that gives us an opportunity to reman these stations up, recrew these stations a little bit. And so that's what we're working on. I think, again, with support from the Congress, we have some of these folks, these boat crews going back to the stations, and we anticipate standing those up in a prioritized fashion as we go over the next couple of years. Obviously, the new crew coming out of Cape May are junior personnel, so we're going to have to grow them into not just these boat crews, but to our marine safety professionals and as well as our cyber professionals and all around. And I will just reassure some of the panel members that yes, we are focusing along the border, but we have not lost sight on marine safety. Our three prongs that we're focused on right now are the flow of commerce, which is the marine transportation system, ensuring that we have professionals that are running our entire workforce like that, as well as our contingencies and the border control. Those things are all important to the service.
Great. Thank you. I'd be remiss if I didn't also put a fine point on this, supporting maritime safety and especially our coasties by, just driving home the point. We've already talked about the Jones Act waiver, longest, broadest in history, and how it just continues to undermine domestic security and our maritime safety. So thank you all for paying attention to that. Please help us continue to sound the alarm and see if we might be able to reverse course there. So thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Van Drew?
Thank the chairman. Thank you all for being here. It's good to see some of you again. First of all, let me say, yes, we love you in Cape May. I always say this, even though I ask some hard questions, which I will today. We appreciate you, and I think as all of you know and most people know, it's the training center, and 85% is the number I get of all coasties that are trained, that go through boot camp, do so in Cape May. We're a proud Coast Guard community. The amazing part is we're going to have almost $500 million going into that facility, and new barracks, new pistol range, new training center areas, so they're not going to be outside in the bad weather all the time. It's a record amount of money, so that's good news. So while we sound the alarm on some things, we can ring the bell for other good things that never have happened before, and it's taken many years to get to that point. Sometimes we always forget, in life too, by the way, to talk about the good, right? We're always the negative. And there is negative always, but the positive matters. So thank you all for all your help with that. Please, let's get it done. I wanted to talk about something I've spoken about before, the CVC Policy Letter 2402. And Rear Admiral, I've spoken to you about it before. I haven't spoken to you about it, but you're probably familiar with the issue. And it continues to be an issue. It's something that we're worried about, and I'd really like to see some definitive action with them. Congress created the alternative to class pathway because mandatory classification was raising domestic costs, domestic shipbuilding was more expensive, and it was pricing small operators out of new vessel construction. We want the small operators, we want the fishermen, we want people to be able to compete, and this is a tangle of bureaucracy which wasn't supposed to be, and it's still not fixed. So I'm going to keep asking about it until it gets fixed. The policy letter seems to reimpose classification style requirements that Congress, I'm going to say this twice, Congress did not authorize this, and it potentially costs vessel owners tens of thousands of dollars. There's a fundamental concern about the Coast Guard's treatment of, quote, accepted organizations. No single policy expressly creates separate categories of acceptance for vessel examinations, vessel construction, vessel oversight, and post-construction surveys. Yet Policy Letter 2402 establishes separate applications and approvals for each and every function. In plain English, for the folks that aren't as familiar with this, Chairman, it's just more layers of bureaucracy, and it makes it difficult for the people we want to serve, which are small, hardworking commercial fishermen and shipbuilders and others. We don't want to do that. That's not our intent. It's not Congress's intent. On July 6th of this year, the Coast Guard separately approved NAMs for new construction oversight, even though it was already recognized as an accepted organization for other fishing vessel functions. Question, what specific statutory or regulatory authority allows the Coast Guard to divide a single accepted organization designation into separate function-specific approvals? I hope that's clear. My question's clear. So I'll ask the two Rear Admirals if you want to answer that.
I'll defer that to Captain Rear Admiral Select Confer, just because he's directly in charge of the surveyors and the commercial vessel structure. Yes, sir.
Whoever can answer it best.
Question, Representative Andrew. I might have to take that for a get back, but you did mention that the National Association of Maritime Surveyors being added to the list of folks who can approve new construction oversight for fishing vessels. And at the end of the day, we're all about safety of vessels out there. We want to make sure they're constructed to standards and they're going to not have stability issues, not have structural issues. And I mean, that's our bottom line. We want to make sure they're constructed and surveyed by appropriate people to a standard that's going to ensure that the vessel lasts for 30, 40 years. As far as your specific question about authorities and code sites that give us that authority, we're going to take that as a get back, but I did want to stress that we worked hard with NAMs to get them added to that approval list to give more options to fishing vessel owners, fishing vessel builders to have folks to survey.
And I appreciate your answer. The fishermen want to be safe too. Nobody wants to be unsafe. We really want to work with them and not against them. So my message to you is to continue that process to look for and determine other ways to achieve that goal, yet help them with less bureaucracy and complication. That was the will of Congress. That's why we did what we did. And yet here we are still twisted up. And the reality is we can give the wonderful speeches, but at the end of the day, the fishermen are having a tough time with this. And they don't want to have a tough time. And they do want to most, like everything else, most do want to work with you. So I'm charging you to please look at that. And because we're going to have other hearings, you guys are going to be back. I'm going to be here, hopefully, so those questions will be there. And then the other thing that I was going to ask, can you confirm, are you able to confirm that the Coast Guard will not retroactively apply this policy letter to invalidate previously completed construction oversight? In other words, it was done already. Are we going to take this new policy, which is more complicated and harder, go back and invalidate what was already done? I hope not. If you can't answer me, get back to me on that too.
I'll get back to you with a more complete answer, but I do think that our policy letter just clarified what was already in U.S. code. So we didn't change anything with the policy letter, and our thought was that those standards were in place in U.S. code. The policy letter just clarifies.
Everything's always open to interpretation, everything we do here, so I think there's some different viewpoints on that. The policy letter calls itself guidance, right? I am accurate about that guidance. It appears to be enforced as a binding condition of vessel compliance. Compliance and guidance are two things, and using it as something that's binding is also different. So again, I'm asking you to look at that. I'm asking when you leave here today, so please look at that and be able to get back to me on that, okay? I appreciate you all. Thank you for being here. I let all you off the hook. That was the hot seats over here. Thank you so much, Chairman. I yield back.
Gentleman yields. I've got a couple more things. Mr. Sargis, how do the operators that follow the laws and applicable safety requirements differentiate themselves from operators that cut corners? What more can be done to confront these bad actors?
So the passenger vessel operators, they bear the burden of compliance, which is a good thing because it makes us a lot safer. Our crews are much better trained, and the passengers that we take carrying humans, the most precious cargo, when they come down and they get on a vessel, most of the public is ignorant into if a vessel is inspected or not. They assume that if they're boarding a vessel that they chartered through maybe social media or any random website, they assume that the safety precautions are in place. But if it's a non-inspected vessel, a lot of the times there are mates that are not licensed. A lot of the vessels are not insured. They don't have applicable safety equipment, and they routinely flout the local laws. We know that several vessels have felony captain of the port orders against them, yet they're still out there and taking passengers. Furthermore, there have been in the past Coast Guard surge operations, particularly in Chicago where I'm from. And during these surge operations, they have, which have been temporary, they've made large amounts of arrests. And they have actually found that a lot of these illegal passenger vessel operators are also committing crimes ancillary to the crime of running illegally. Very extreme things such as money laundering, possession of narcotics, prostitution, real criminal activity. So it is a major concern. There have been fatalities, but really when it comes to the Coast Guard, it's a resource issue. They need more boarding teams, they need more funding, but really they need those boarding teams. They also need to have a national policy which calls for the maximum penalty once these captain of the port orders move from the field teams to the judicial side. We see a lot of times that the penalties levied on illegal operators are essentially the cost of doing business and can be easily eaten by the rate that they're charging, the day rate that they're charging. So, once again, when it comes to the Coast Guard modernization plan, we know it's needed. And we were very happy to see the investment, to see the amount of new personnel that Force Design 2028 calls for. We just want to make sure that in terms of resource allocation, the safety side is treated as seriously as the security side. And we're not trying to undersell any of the problems at the border. We understand that there was a crisis at the border and it needs to be addressed, but we know that we can do both, have safety, security, and military readiness and border control. And the illegal charter operations, they are a big issue. We thank you for the GAO study that will be coming out. We do believe that it will show that the extent of the problem, and we hope that it will result in a national policy and legislation that will help finally put an end to this scourge on our waterways. So thank you.
Mr. Frankie, would you like to say something since you've been quiet down there?
I would. Everything Mr. Sargis just said is exactly the same as we have on the West Coast. Just had a meeting recently with all the regional leaders regarding illegal charter vessels and the need for action. I'm happy to report the Coast Guard Sector San Diego especially, which my office is based in, is really taking it to heart. They're walking the docks. They're actually doing their best to interdict. Now the Port of San Diego is involved as well with ordinances, but it's going to take a regional effort. And anyway, I think our biggest thing, and just this is my only opportunity to say it, our biggest thing that we want to focus on, hopefully in the future, is Coast Guard continuing to have wooden boat inspection training and really lean on getting good trained inspectors out to keep our fleet afloat. So, thank you, sir.
Okay. Anybody else like to have some final comments?
Chairman, can I just add on to what the passenger vessel folks just said there? Coast Guard in complete agreement from that standpoint, from an illegal charter standpoint. It's not just a fairness issue. It's not just it is a safety issue. And the Coast Guard has had to get better at this, and we have gotten better over the last 5 years. We got a long way to go, but the coordination between our investigators, our boarding teams, CGIS, with local law enforcement, the local industry users, and DOJ. Everybody's got to work in concert there. We just had an illegal charter interdiction in Charleston. We've had like a record-setting case down in Key West over the last 6 months. So we think we can make some progress here. We need to get a better policy on it. I think kind of codify it so that every captain of port has that in place and how we're going to enforce those things. So that's great. And I see Mr. Frankie down there, and Admiral Confer and I both in the late 90s went through your father's wood boat and fiberglass school out in San Diego, one of the best schools of my career, not just for the location, but I think we don't ever want to lose sight of the wooden vessels themselves are, they're very hard to inspect, and they can fail catastrophically if you don't know what you're looking at. And they bring such history to the waterway, and they're beautiful, and we need to do our part. So thanks for all the work that your family's done.
Thank you all. I think we've kind of beat this thing pretty good this morning. Appreciate everybody being here. It's always good to see each and every one of you. I thank you for helping me in this job, and I want to continue to support each and every one of you. So committee stands and adjourned.
Thank you.
Nice.